baby's crying, which had saved them the night before, now puts them in great danger. They have to find some way to quiet the child, and quickly. Then Gerda remembers the rations she looted from the train.
Every time when our baby wanted to cry, we put the small malt cartons in her mouth, and she was quiet then. But I heard everything what happened in our home, in our house. And there was a friend of mine, the same age as I, and I heard her crying, and it was so awful because it was in my room, in my bedroom, it happened. And I heard her crying, and I heard her crying my name. I was so afraid that some soldier could come upstairs to us there. And if one would have come, I was just ready to jump down. No one could have touched me. I was ready to jump down. And some of neighbors across the street and so, they have done this. Friends of my sister, she jumped down with her little son. And this was the worst night I ever had, yes. And I never forget it.
of April, 8 days to victory. The Russians are in Berlin. They have taken Vienna and are closing in on the Czechoslovakian capital, Prague.
Churchill's still urging Eisenhower to get to Prague before the Russians, but Eisenhower, under orders from the American Chief of Staff, General George Marshall, isn't prepared to suffer any casualties. In his opinion, Prague doesn't have a military value, and so General Patton is ordered to advance only as far as the Czech border, when he could have actually been in Prague within 24 hours.
All over Eastern Europe, Germany's iron grip is being replaced by the Soviets. But to the west, the full extent of the Nazi evil comes as a horrendous shock. A few miles outside Munich, paratrooper Clancy Lyle oversees the local townspeople cleaning up a place they claimed didn't exist. The concentration camp lay right under their noses. Yet the residents of Buchloe say they didn't know it was there.
And the people of the area had to know, because those people was out on their farms working for them. They had to see the column of smoke. They had to know what was going on. But it's the first time they had to grab hold of these corpses. And the first time they had to bathe these walking skeletons, you know, man, women, whatever, they had to bathe them. And you could see that they was shaking like this, crying like they got caught. That's what it was. And they tried to, you know, I repented out, you know, that's crap. But it was a really marked difference. When we first went into town there, they had the flags out, the white flags out and all this stuff. Kept aloof, kept away from you, stuff like that. Now all of a sudden, oh, please forgive me, all that, you know. Their philosophy turned right around after they had to go into the camp. So I had no pity for those people.
There is little pity for the Germans in Berlin. During the day, the Soviet soldiers are busy fighting, but in the evening, they get drunk. Then they go looking for loot. and women.
The Russian soldiers went from cellar to cellar, from house to house. On our side, there was a butcher, and his daughter was only 14 years old. And next day we heard that she was shot down because when the Russian soldier wanted her to come with him, so she gave him and then he took his gun and shot her down. My mother said, we cannot stay here anymore in this house. We'll go to a friend of my sister, some streets away, and we could stay there the next days, because this house there, this could be closed. It was not damaged. And there have been more men in the house who watched every night and called then Kommissar, Kommissar. They always said, if you call Kommissar, Kommissar, then the Soviet soldiers stop it. So.
Berlin is only hours away from falling to the Russians. They have now fought their way to the very steps of the Reichstag, only a short distance from Hitler's bunker. Inside the bunker, the atmosphere is tense and bleak. There's no day or night. People live in a continual twilight zone, unable to sleep. They speak in whispers. Hitler is terrified of being taken alive. He is determined not to suffer the same humiliating fate as Mussolini. Telephone operator Rochus Misch and the rest of the bunker staff are all too aware that the closer the Soviets get, the closer Hitler is to taking his own life.
Everybody was already half dead. It was very close to the end. I don't know if you can imagine what those days were like. The lack of sleep, the feelings of things coming to an end.
That same morning of April 30th, General Weidling informs the Fuhrer that the city's garrison is running out of food and ammunition, with resistance to the Russians collapsing, and his own head of the SS and Gestapo, Heinrich Himmler, offering to surrender to the Allies. Hitler feels betrayed and depressed. He knows now the war is lost. That afternoon, Hitler says goodbye to his staff. Then at about 3 o'clock, looking old and haggard, he retires to his study with his young wife. As the minutes tick by, a tense, anxious silence fills the bunker.
We knew he would shoot himself. Everybody was waiting to see whether they could hear the shot. And then somebody called out, "I think the time has come." I didn't hear the shot, but someone must have heard it, and when they made the call, everything went quiet. It was quiet for a few minutes. Then we wanted to see what had happened. I can't remember who opened the door. But when the door was opened, I wanted to see. I went over a few paces to the right, and there I could see how Hitler had fallen, and Eva Braun was next to him on the sofa. She was wearing a dark blue dress with white sequins.
Hitler shot himself in the head as he bit down on a cyanide capsule. For Eva, the cyanide was enough.
After I saw it, I ran away, but I became frightened and confused and ran back. As I came back, I could see how Hitler was being wrapped in blankets on the floor. And then I saw, I can't remember whether it was Hitler or Eva Braun who was carried out first. Then I ran away. I went to the commander of our unit in the new Reich Chancellery and made my report. The Führer is dead. Nothing mattered anymore. Nothing mattered. All I can remember doing is closing the large handles of the steel doors. Then I became frightened. I knew this was concrete. How would I get out of here? Could I get out?
Adolf Hitler and his bride of only 36 hours are then taken outside by his staff, doused in petrol and burnt in a bomb crater. The enemy will not be able to display or defile his corpse. Now it's up to his successor, the new Führer, Grand Admiral Dönitz, to try and stop the massacre and the complete destruction of Berlin. Just after 6 o'clock that evening, Vasily Ustegov and his comrades in the 150th Rifle Division force their way into the main hall of the Reichstag. The fighting is ferocious and intense, the casualties high.
It was a huge, dark building. There wasn't even a single candle in there. If you try to get somewhere in the dark, you risk being killed by your own men. It's easier to kill your own troops in the dark than the enemy. Things like that happen to the Russians and the Germans alike. It's very difficult to know where you are and who is in front of you in a dark city.
The Russian soldiers have only one goal: to fly their flag from the Reichstag, the heart and soul of Nazi Germany.